I will have no fat boys kissing me, thank you very much. For today's episode I must give you a content warning. If you are triggered by sexual assault, please tread carefully. Also, there is a mature content warning for this episode as well as spoiler warning for the missed book, film, TV show, audio drama and text-based video game. Like anyone really cares.
Welcome to episode 12?
12
of The Horror of Babylon, where we are covering the adaptations of Stephen King's The Mist. I'm Ryan, and with me as always is Daniel. Say hi, Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
Well, we are covering several things this episode, so let's get started. The bulk of this conversation, of course, is going to be about the film, Frank Darabont's The Mist film. We are going to talk a little bit about the first episode of the TV series, the audio drama, and the text-based game at the end. But let's just go ahead and jump into the movie, because that's where we're going to spend most of our time. Although I am curious to see how much we talk about the show.
the show might take up a lot.
We'll see. So let's go ahead and get started. So just briefly, in terms of structure of the movie, it's basically the same as the book.
Yeah, it follows most of the same beats. I believe we discussed this earlier. We remembered some stuff happening that didn't actually happen in the movie.
Right. For instance, the affair that he has with Amanda,
yeah,
I thought happened in the movie too, but it didn't.
I was so positive it did, and when I rewatched it, I was just like...
But it doesn't really affect the movie.
Yeah, no, it does.
It's fine. All right, so let's just go ahead and jump right into characters. We're going to talk about David Drayton, played by Thomas Jane. What did you think about David in the movie?
I think he was pretty good casting.
I really like Thomas Jane. I have one criticism, and I'm just going to go ahead and get it out here.
Mm-hmm. Why
Why does he do that, Christian Bale Batman voice where he just gets really low and gravelly like that, just randomly?
I don't know the actual answer. I suspect that people who aren't put in aggressive situations very often have to try to imagine how would I sound if I was trying to act tough in front of a couple rednecks. Swear to me, Yeah.
So the couple times where he did that, it kind of took me out of that. But other than that, I think he's great.
Yeah, I don't think there was a bad actor in this movie.
No. And then I think he's maybe even a little more likable in the movie than he is in the book. They kind of get rid of... he does hit, when Norm the bag boy dies, he does punch the other guys a couple times, but he doesn't... It's not like it's described in the book where he totally wails on.
Watered down isn't the right word. He was definitely made to be a little bit more user-friendly.
I think in the book, King spends a little bit more time talking about the human responses to this extreme stress.
Yeah.
For example, like we were just talking about, where he and Amanda have sex to kind of as a stress response. That's something that's not in the movie.
And there's a reason for that. That's not as marketable to a mainstream movie-going audience. You also get in movies, unless they're really weird or artsy, you don't get a lot of that internal dialogue. So you don't see what he's thinking. He has to convey it through actions and words.
And the movie's a little more plot driven. It doesn't give nearly as much background for the characters, and it just kind of moves along at a quicker pace, which is good. It makes sense. I think slowing this movie down with more background on the characters could have been to its detriment.
Yeah, I think it would have bogged down the good parts of the movie.
And then just quickly mentioning Nathan Gamble as Billy Drayton. He's definitely one of the more impressive child actors I've seen in the last 10, 15 years.
Every time I see this movie and see this kid actor, I just want to slap people when they tell me, oh, you just have to ignore the bad child actor. I'm like, no, there's good child actors out there. You just have to find them.
And then, as good as this kid is, just makes the end so much worse.
Yeah.
Which we're gonna talk about the end in a little bit. I don't want to jump the gun on that, but yeah, I mean
that's the big money shot of the movie.
Yeah. Then just moving down. Probably the actor I'm most impressed with in this movie is Andre Braugher, who plays Brent Norton. I know him. My partner and my daughter, they really like watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and he's the police chief in that show, so that's what I know him from. But he was killer in this movie. The scene where he's about to go out with his group into the mist, and David is trying to talk him out of it, and he says, "What if you're wrong?" And he just looks him dead in the eye and says, "Well, then the joke's on me."
Yeah,
Like,
that was a great delivery.
I could not believe that. That is stunning to me.
I also wanted to give a shout out to Frank Darabont for the way he directed that scene, and just it was a perfect use of close up in the way you could see the character's lips moving and enunciating the words. Like, you could have had that same line delivered from like pulled back, and I don't think it would have had the same response as a good close up and really seeing the emotions playing on his face, because you can see that little bit of doubt. He's a great actor.
He is. He really is. And real quick, Frank Darabont was actually the first Pip on our outline, and I just completely skipped over him. So he wrote the screenplay and directed this movie. He is a King veteran. Mm-hmm. He also directed Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile. And he did A Dollar Baby for the Woman in the Room, which is a short film about a based on a short story from the Night Shift collection. And there's a joke that he exclusively does Stephen King prison movies, because Shawshank and Green Mile are both prison stories. The Woman in the Room has a character that's in prison, and then The Mist is about people who are
trapped.
Trapped, yeah.
That makes sense. I used to say that he was the person who directed the good Stephen King movies.
There are others.
But now there are others. I think that it used to be a lot more slim pickings.
What's his face? The guy who... I know you haven't seen Stand By Me or read The Body, mm-hmm. but the same guy who directed that movie, Rob Reiner, mm-hmm. he also directed Misery.
Oh, okay, that's a great movie.
Yeah.
I think that's the only one where I've seen the movie and haven't read the book.
I was a little underwhelmed by the book, but it's not a short book, and it all takes place in basically one room between two characters.
Yeah. It's very character-driven.
Yeah. I'm going to try it again, though.
Yeah.
But there are parts of it that I know you would love, and there's a lot of psychology in it.
Yeah. I love the hobbling scene.
Oh my god. It's worse in the book. Do you know what happens in the book?
No.
Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, you can spoil it.
All right, spoilers for... so, instead of her smashing his kneecaps, she amputates it with an axe.
That's fucking great.
I know. It's... one of the, like, more tame things that happens in the book, but for some reason is just terrible. Like, he knocks over some food and makes a mess in his room, and she mops it up, mm-hmm. and then to punish him, she makes him drink the mop water.
Oh, I've seen that hentai.
Okay, all right, moving on. And then just mentioning some of our other characters, Ollie Weeks.
Love.
Yeah, he's played by Toby Jones, who I know from the Captain America movie.
We talked about how it's sort of insinuated that he's probably homosexual. They don't do a lot of it with this movie, but what I liked about it is how clear it seems in the story. They don't dwell on it in the movie, but there's this propensity to cast very traditionally attractive men in gay roles.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I know a lot of gay and bisexual men. Some of them are more average, and they're people. I liked his...
Some are attractive, some aren't.
I liked his small-town average look.
Yeah, and he definitely fits the look for the character, and then he was kind of this middle-aged, overweight, balding guy who was stuck in this dead-end job.
I kept trying to look at his hands. I don't think I noticed. Did they have him wear the sapphire ring in the movie? I was really kind of hoping that was like a small detail, but I can't remember.
I didn't think to look. Let me just...
I kept trying to look, and then I kept getting distracted.
Jones wear a ring in the mist? I don't think anybody has...
I don't think anyone cares as much as I do about small shit like that.
Okay, never mind. I'll try to remember next time I watch the movie.
I'm very anal retentive when it comes to small details like that, so when I see adaptations, I like to see how far the directors go.
Yep. But his character was a great adaptation of the book character.
I loved it when he was drunk. I'm not drunk.
Another one that was great was Mrs. Repler.
Mm-hmm.
She was just as baller as she was in the book, getting in there with her Raid Aid cans when she uses the lighter to turn it into a flamethrower.
That's one of the things that we'll talk about here in a little bit, where they kind of increase the intensity for the movie-going audience.
Yeah, they do. Oh my god, yeah, they do. That spider... We'll get there, but holy shit. Mostly, it's that they include most of the characters from the book, but then they also add some characters. So, primarily is the army guys, which they're in the book,
Mm-hmm.
but they actually characterize one of them, who is a local guy who's in the army, but he's been stationed with the Arrowhead Project there in Bridgeton, and he has this romantic connection with a checkout girl at the supermarket.
Yeah.
What did you think of adding that kind of subplot?
If it was up to me, I wouldn't have added that.
But it wasn't...
It wasn't detrimental.
Yeah, it wasn't so horrendous that it, like, totally stood out.
Yeah, I think it works. We talk about this all the time. When you're adapting something, sometimes you have to do things for a different audience. What people like in books isn't the same thing they like in movies all the time.
And it's not like we were going back to that subplot every 5 minutes.
Yeah, it wasn't distracting. I felt like it was there to try to give a more definitive answer to The Mist.
Yeah, and that's actually one of my criticisms of the movie, is I think they answer the question too well.
Yeah, they give too much away on it.
I don't think there's any doubt there isn't any doubt in the movie that the army is responsible.
Yeah, that's the Arrowhead Project.
Yeah, whereas in the book, it's like, maybe.
It's heavily implied, but at the same time, I like that little bit of mystery. I like that little bit of doubt.
Mm-hmm.
The Mist to me is a book that's all about doubt, because you literally, that's the story. You can't see what's out there.
Yeah.
You can't see the answers.
Right.
And when you give answers, sometimes that detracts a little bit. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's related to this character. That's why I bring it up.
And just closely on the monsters, like, we'll talk more about them when we get to our scary shit section, but you see a little bit more of the monsters than there's description in the book, but...
Which I feel was something that they felt they needed to do for a movie.
I do think it works, but it kind of adds to that. They over-explain it a little bit more in the movie.
I feel it works, and it does... We'll get to that when we get to scary shit.
Yeah. All right, we'll table that for now.
Yeah.
So we do also want to mention Mrs. Carmody.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned last week in our book episode that I thought she was maybe a little miscast, that she was too young. I think maybe I want to amend that and say this is just a situation where I pictured the character in my head while I was reading the book as being much older, and I do think the lady who played her did a very good job. Marcia Gay Harden.
She did a very good job with this version of Mrs. Carmody. I do prefer the book version, which is a little bit more on the folksy side.
Yeah.
Where this is traditional fire and brimstone Southern Baptist.
I don't want to use this phrase, but I'm going to anyway. She's kind of a Karen.
Yeah. She's a lot more what you would how she is in the movie, and this is one of the things I wrote down in my notes, is more like what people picture when they hear Stephen King Christian.
Yeah.
She's very, let me keep quoting the Bible, and where the Mrs. Carmody in the book was, let me talk to you about the old God, and let me tell you about the abominations in the earth. She wasn't quoting direct biblical passages.
But at least she was focusing on, like, Old Testament God.
Yeah, no,
which I guess you have to if you're talking about an angry God.
And I also think that was done, again, for movie-going audiences, because it's easier to convey, hey, here's a conservative Christian you've probably ran into, as opposed to the backwoods witch woman that's part Christian, part witchcraft, part
She's kind of
Lovecraftian old god.
sort of a mix in the book. She's sort of a mix of fundamentalist Christian and old school pagan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would like to see that adapted in some form, in some way.
I think this will get adapted again at some point.
But for this movie, I think it worked with what they were doing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To me, this isn't a criticism. I'm just trying to explain the differences that I'm seeing.
Yeah, I did like her. She did an excellent job of playing a character that the audience is obviously supposed to hate.
Yeah.
The first thing that jumps out to me is Umbridge from the Harry Potter movies.
Yeah.
That she's just, oh my god, she's such a bitch. She's just, all the audience is just supposed to gang up on her and then, cheer when Ollie eventually kills her.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I think her death is pretty great in the movie.
Her death is perfect.
My
opinion.
The milk bottle shatters. She falls to her knees and then he pegs her in the head just for good measure.
It's hard to convey this stuff when we're just talking to it with you guys on a podcast, but I assume any of our listeners probably watch the movies too.
Yeah.
And the direction, and again, good on Frank Darabont. He knows how to craft a shot.
Mm-hmm.
Increasing drama, shooting it in a different way or from different angles can diminish effects. But the way he had the bottle shatter and fall to her ground, and then the second shot to the head.
Because you didn't really exactly know what happened when that milk bottle shattered.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably did, but you're like, wait, what just happened? And then you see the blood, and then she falls, and then he shoots her again. And you're like, fuck.
And you see the smoke from the gun, and
Yeah.
then it shows a focus, and then the focus changes so you can see Ollie.
Mm-hmm.
I like stuff like that. I appreciate well-crafted scenes.
Okay, so jumping in to some scary shit, I gotta say, this movie fucks with me.
Yeah.
And it's less the fear response that it invokes in me than it is the anxiety
Mm-hmm.
and the stress. Like, this movie, literally stresses me out. When I started it earlier today, 15-20 minutes in, I consider just turning it off and just not rewatching it. Because it literally just stresses me out. Part of that is being a parent and knowing what happens, but there's a lot of anxiety in this movie because there's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of time where nothing happens, but you're waiting for something to happen. It's kind of one of those powder keg movies where you're just waiting for everything to fucking blow up.
Yeah. The anxiety that this movie builds, it moves at a mood whiplash sometimes. You feel like you're getting this slow burn, and then all of a sudden, there's one of the creatures dragging you out into the mist. You don't know what's going on, and then there's all this blood. I really like the creature designs in this movie. I think some of the effects are a little dated.
I think that the practical effects are amazing. I think the CG is not good.
Yeah, that's what I would say. And the tentacles, I remember them being so much better, in my head.
I think the tentacles are not good.
And the thing is I've seen the behind the scene features. They have some practical tentacles, mm-hmm. and then they overlay it with CG because they have other CG stuff going on in the background. And I think if I were to give advice, if I were to travel back in time, I would have been you don't need to make it this big and visceral to convey the same amount of fear.
So, there's a black and white version of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Frank Darabont shot this wanting it to be in black and white.
No studio is going to let you do that.
Right. But he does have, for the Blu-ray, they were able to do a black and white version.
Mm-hmm.
I watched this movie twice, both times in color. I wanted to watch it in black and white for this review, but I didn't get to.
I have seen it in black and white, and it's a little better.
I've heard that it makes the CG better because it's not as obvious.
It's harder to tell.
Okay.
And all the creatures are really sort of like that. They had practical models for everything, and then they created... I think the birds were pretty good.
That and the giant lobster scorpion thing, because you never actually really...
It was very hidden in the mist.
Yeah, you just get to really see the outline of it. I thought the bugs were fine.
Yeah, they were fine.
The the worst one for me is the tentacles.
And that's kind of unfortunate, especially because of how much I love this movie.
Yeah, and that's kind of like...
But that's like the big reveal.
Yeah, like that's kind of the iconic monster part of it.
Yeah.
Although, the one like CG effect that I didn't think was bad, or maybe it's just because I'm so freaked out I can't even criticize it, is the spiders coming out of the MP's body. Like, that's fucking nasty, dude.
Again, that's another one of those, where they upped the ante, where they were like, we need to,
Spiders the size of dogs was not enough.
Yeah, so we have to have, like, spiders bursting out of the MP's body. And that MP also confirms it was the Arrowhead Project.
I'm sorry.
Because they want to make sure the audience gets answers.
Yeah, and like, in the book, yes, the two soldiers hang themselves, but they could have just hanged themselves because they were scared.
Yeah, everyone was killing themselves in the story. Well, not everyone, but
a lot of people
were.
Did. Yeah.
And oh, what's her name? Mrs. Rippler. Thank you. Goes from spraying it with a bug spray to making a flamethrower.
Yeah.
But that stuff looks cool visually, so I can't criticize that.
I liked that. I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
They take more people into the pharmacy than they did in the book. When they eventually leave the supermarket, they take more people with them, and that's so you can see more people die.
Yeah, so you can get more of the money shots.
Yeah.
And this movie's filled with money shots.
Oh, there's so many.
Yeah.
I think the worst like monster related death has got to be like getting half eaten by the spiders and then having the eggs laid in you so they can just
hatch
and burst out of you.
That was probably the hardest.
I could feel them.
What did you think of the giant behemoth, the 6-legged creature?
I wish you would have seen less of it. I would have liked it if you could only mainly see the legs.
I agree. When I picked, have you played Shadow of the Colossus?
No, but I've seen gameplay of it.
That's kind of how I pictured. It was like something out of that, just walking through the mist.
So for you Magic players out there, I kind of pictured Kozilek, the Eldrazi.
Okay.
I'm just this one.
Yeah, I mean that's not bad.
That's kind of what I pictured.
Just a giant eldritch horror shaded by the mist.
Yeah, and like I thought it looked good, and I'm not unhappy with it, but I just wish you saw less of it.
Yeah, that was another one of those. Let's give people a good money shot of the stuff that's out there.
The description in the book is that it's so huge that it's above the clouds and you can't get a good sense of it.
Yeah, it's above the mist.
Yeah.
It's so high up that its body's hidden by the mist. It's a moving mountain.
But I could also just see, like, them just not putting that in the movie, so I'm glad it was in there.
I was glad it was in there.
And they get rid of the dream at the beginning, which maybe that would have given too much away too quick. I kind of understand, but...
I don't know. If this movie gets adapted again, I would like that dream sequence to somehow be included.
Yeah, because for me, that was the most haunting part of the whole book.
Yeah, for me in the book, it was that and the tentacles, which was unfortunate that... Because I remember the tentacle scene being so much better in my head before I rewatched this movie.
So, what's really disappointing about the effects in this movie is they consulted Guillermo del Toro. Like, Frank Darabont called him and said, I need your special effects guy. And, you know, he's the guy who did Pan's Labyrinth and the Hellboy movies. Really great special effects.
10 out of 10s.
Yeah. But then, like you said, they had these practical things, but then they overlaid them with CG, and it just doesn't look good.
Yeah.
But despite all that, I still think it's one of the best modern horror movies.
Oh, no, I agree. These criticisms that I'm giving are more for, like, devil advocacy.
Yeah.
And so that we have some stuff to discuss, you know?
Okay, so moving up, more scary stuff. Something I actually think, a scene that was added from the book that is actually an improvement and adds to the themes is, aside from the end, this is the scene that I had the biggest emotional reaction to. It's where they blame the soldier and they kill him collectively as a mob, or they stab him and then throw him out to get killed.
That's hard to watch.
Yeah, it's scary.
And it's hard to watch because, unlike the monsters in the mist, this is something I can see happening.
And it also, sort of different, but it kind of reminds me of Adrian Mellon and It getting beaten up by all the guys. It's just like a bunch of people ganging up on one person who's obviously innocent and done nothing wrong, but it's mob justice. It's scary.
Yeah. I don't want to call them extras. Some of them are extras, but all the actors that had to play that mob mentality part, I think they are bit parts in this movie, but I think they should be commended with how good of a job they did of giving it that feel.
The guy who played the butcher was scary.
Yeah.
The part where David and his group are trying to leave and the butcher just steps out from behind the shelf and he's holding the knife, that was legitimately scary.
Yeah. And all of those actors, you could feel that intensity. And again, I'm going to kiss Frank Darabont's ass a little bit more. Pulling those performances out of actors, that is a talent. And I appreciate it.
One thought I had to myself while I was watching this movie is like, I would love to have been an extra in this movie.
I would have killed somebody to be an extra in this movie.
There are so many people in that grocery store that never say anything, but they get to be in these awesome scenes, like when the bugs and the birds invade, where they kill the army guy. Like, just to be able to be in that crowd and just to... I mean, I'm sure I'm not good enough of an actor to be part of that, but it would have been awesome.
I still think that we need to do a dollar baby. I think
we will.
I think we got just enough talent to do that.
Once we get we do more and we get a little more established, and COVID is less of a
issue. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's something we can definitely. All right. So anything before we get the end has its own topic, but before we get to that, is there anything else scary in this movie that got you?
Again, a lot of this is hard to describe because this is all audio and we're not showing you any pictures. Mm-hmm. The way some of the scenes are just framed in the dark and the shadows are casting off faces when he's talking to Ollie in the dark and Ollie's like explaining what's going on or how he sees the situation. Those kind of things are haunting to me because that feels very visceral and real.
You know what was probably the most haunting scene for me in the whole thing? Was when they first called David up to the plate glass and the first bug is there, but then it pans out to the parking lot and it's just the mist with just bugs just flying off. And there's very little music. It's very low, soft music, and it's just like maybe 1 to 2 minutes of them all just staring in the window, just watching these bugs just fly back and forth.
She said they'd come for you in the dark, and they did.
She was right. She was right. She knew they'd come. I wish she has that. Mrs. Carmody says they'll leave us alone tomorrow night. I wish we would have found out. Like, do they leave them alone? Obviously, they probably don't. But, and one other thing that is kind of scary is the visual depictions of suicide.
Again, very visceral, very real, very well constructed shots.
Not only the guys who hang themselves, but and what I thought was a little bit of a callback to The Stand is where the one lady takes pills and kills herself, and then Amanda gets freaked out because I was sleeping next to her and I didn't know. I just thought she was asleep. Remind me of Larry and Rita in the tent where he's like, I was sleeping next to her and she was dead.
I was gonna fuck her. Daniel, who do you relate to most in The Stand again?
Okay, so, and then just quickly while we're on it, some other Stephen King Easter eggs. In the first scene with the paintings, there's a painting of the gunslinger in the Dark Tower.
That's the most obvious one. That's the big one.
There's a painting of a kid with a red balloon.
Yeah.
When the bug lands on Mrs. Carmody, do you know what she says to it? My life for you.
Oh, that's right.
Yep. And also, what is David's nickname for Billy?
I don't remember.
Big Bill, which is Bill Denborough's nickname in It.
Okay.
So just some fun ones there.
Those are cool. Yeah. I like that shit.
Okay, so we've been dancing around it. I want you to tell me your feelings on the end, and then I'll tell you what I think.
Okay. How do you feel about the ending proving Mrs. Carmody right?
Bad.
Because he kills the boy and then the mist goes away.
Bad.
Because that's my big thought on the movie.
Okay, so the first time I watched this, and I saw that ending, I knew it had a different ending, but I didn't know what. I was physically sick. I was so upset.
I bet.
And then I watched it again today, second time, and I was anxious the whole way through it until we started to get a little bit closer, and I was a little less emotionally invested the second time, and I was able to be a little bit more critical. I'm not as big a fan of the ending on the second viewing. I don't think it's quite as believable, and I'll tell you why. So they're in the car, they're driving south until they run out of gas. One, you know you're going to run out of gas. When you get down to a quarter of a tank, why don't you start looking for a place to hide at that point? But willing suspension of disbelief.
They're just trying to get as far south as they can, hoping.
Yeah, we'll let that one go. Willing suspension of disbelief. They run out of gas, they stop. There's no talk, there's no discussion. They immediately go to suicide. They don't even talk about suicide. He looks at each of them and it's like, yeah, kill us. Okay. But that's not even my biggest thing. This was the thing that totally took me out of it.
Okay.
If I was about to shoot my son to prevent him from being ripped apart from monsters, I would be shaking all over. I would be covered in sweat. He is so calm. He's so serious. It literally shows him loading the gun and his hands aren't shaking at all. He's just like, it's just like business. Like he's about to go shoot a rabid dog. He's not upset at all pre-shooting everybody. After, he's very upset, and obviously, and that worked great.
Yeah.
But obviously, I don't know what I would act like in that situation because I've never been in that situation, thank God. But I would think I would be delaying as much as possible. Like, all right, let's wait. Let's put this off. Or if I thought I had to do it, I would be a mess. I'd be like, what? Dry heaving. I'd probably be like about to throw up.
I think what they were going for, and this is just personal interpretation, is he had to do it fast enough before he talked himself out of it, which was just...
You would still think he wasn't even sweating, though. Like, I mean, he was just like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this.
Maybe I'm just too quick to pull the trigger, because that's what I would have done.
I think that end was kind of tacked onto the movie, and they didn't write the rest of it before it to kind of sync up with it. But it doesn't really matter, because the first time you watch this movie, you're just so emotionally invested, you're not thinking about that kind of stuff.
Alright, you want to hear what my problem with the ending is, aside from Mrs. Carmody being correct? Is he shoots them all, and then immediately, like, the army shows up behind them. You didn't hear like this fucking...
The tank, yeah.
Like the tanks, or the stockades, or the marching, the traffic. And I think that you could have maybe done more, because there are explanations you could go with, like the mist is dampening what you can hear also. Yeah. And stuff like that, but you could have conveyed that better. When you're just watching it, I'm sitting there like, man, I bet you could have seen the flashlights if I would have looked in the rearview mirror first.
You know what I think one thing they could have added to make this ending more believable is like an implication that they had been sitting in that car for a while.
That would have helped.
But they literally, I was looking for this. They run out of gas and then they immediately go to it.
And but my big thing with the ending, and I can't remember if this was an original thought or if someone else brought it up to me, is that the ending proves Mrs. Carmody was correct. That a blood sacrifice of one of them, of the kid, brought an end to the mist. Yeah. And literally all the monsters are being killed. The mist is being pushed away.
Well, unfortunately, she's right about a lot of stuff in the movie. She's right about them coming at night, which we explained. Well, duh. But she's also right about the pharmacies. She's like, don't fucking go to the pharmacy, you idiots.
You will die.
You will die.
And then they were like, hey, what if we wrote an ending where we just prove the villain was right the whole time?
All right, so a couple more thoughts about the ending. I think in one way, it's not a very Stephen King ending at all, and then another way it is.
Mm-hmm.
So first, the cool thing I've always appreciated about Stephen King is even though his books are very dark and dour, usually his endings are pretty optimistic.
Yeah.
Normal with Pet Sematary kind of being the huge outlier. Normally the good guys survive and they beat the bad guy, and there are better things to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
So in that respect, obviously this ending is not very Kingian. But one thing that did knock me is another throwback to The Stand. When you give up, bad things happen. When you don't give up, you survive. For instance, Harold and Stu. Harold gets thrown off his bike and breaks his leg, decides to shoot himself. His body eventually gets found by Stu and Larry and the rest. Mm-hmm. Maybe he would have maybe they would have found him and saved him. Mm-hmm. Stu falls down, breaks his leg, considers taking his own life, decides not to, and gets found by Tom Collin.
You know what this ending reminds me of, honestly, is The Mist as written by Richard Bachman.
Yeah.
His books have a lot more dour endings. They're a lot more violent.
Yeah, like the Mist book is a King book, and the Mist movie is a Bachman story. Yeah.
And we're gonna cover these books eventually. They're sister books. They use the same character names and the same villain. And Stephen King wrote one of them as Stephen King, and one of them as Richard Bachman, and that's Desperation and the Regulators. And that's a very good comparison. And once we read those, you'll go, okay, The Mist, very, very Bachman-esque.
And just kind of continuing that line of thought, David gives up and gets punished for it. Mm-hmm. The lady from the beginning, Melissa McBride, Carol from The Walking Dead, she doesn't give up. She goes out into the mist by herself.
And they show her at the end.
Yeah, and she didn't give up hope. She found her kids in their
let's
safe.
talk about this. What kind of woman leaves an 8-year-old kid in charge of another one of their children?
I'm hoping she lived across the street or something. But
even then,
I don't. Yeah, no.
I understand, like, single mother, single parent.
We don't even know if she's single.
We don't have those answers, but
maybe her husband was passed out drunk at the house.
But I don't like judging other people's parenting styles, but I'm going to judge a little bit when you leave an 8-year-old in charge of, what was it, a 4-year-old?
Speaking of judging other parenting styles, now let's talk about the television show. Now, we'll save that. We'll save that for last.
The only thing that I think would have made the ending better is if Norton would have also been in the caravan.
Oh, that would have been, I don't know, that would have been too much. Oh, God.
I
told you.
I wouldn't have even made him front and center. Like, I would have just, like, had him in the background.
So maybe you don't even see that he's there.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that would have been bad.
That's how I would have framed the shot, but...
Okay. All right, so you surprised me. I thought you were going to defend the ending a lot.
I think it works for what they were trying to go for. I think that it has some issues on this would be my third viewing of the movie.
King really likes the ending. He said that if he had thought of it, he may have used it in the book.
Yeah. I also think that, like, if I want, like, you want critical Daniel, it's too definitive. And one of the things I like about the Mist story is they give you possible answers, but it's not really that definitive. Yeah. And he even mentions that at the end of the Mist, like, when he's writing the notes. My father always hated these stories where there's no actual, like, ending, but sometimes that's just the case.
Hitchcock.
Hitchcock endings, yeah.
And even though the end of the book is very hopeful and optimistic,
they
could have died.
Yeah,
they could have died right after.
You just don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that works better, but I don't think as disgusted as a lot of people are with this ending, I think general audiences would have hated it more if they would have gotten a non-answer.
Yeah, and just because obviously, like, it upsets me because I'm a parent and the kid dies, but children dying in books can work towards the theme. I just think, and the first time I watched it, obviously it's a great ending in that it elicits a huge emotional response
Mm-hmm.
from the person watching that. I'm just a little more critical of it on my second viewing is all.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Okay, so we're moving on to Kings and Koontz, which is our props and our slops. What is your king and what is your Koontz for the Mist film?
Okay. My king is I'm just going to give it to all the actors.
Mm-hmm.
I think especially the kid actor. What was his name again? You have it pulled up here, don't you?
Nathan Gamble.
Nathan Gamble. I hope you still have a career. I hope you're still going strong. You did a great job in The Mist. All of them pulled me into the story. My Koontz is unfortunately going to be the tentacles.
My Koontz is also the CG.
Yeah.
Probably maybe the practical effects are my king and the
CG.
is my Koontz.
That's fair.
The body that was cut in half.
Mm-hmm. I thought that's another one of those that was like, I preferred the minimalism in the story where they just pull back a cord and it's red and there's obviously blood on it,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's too much of the body. That, again, I think that works for a lot of movie-going audiences.
Yeah. And again, like, even if we don't like some specific things in the movie, it doesn't change anything about the book.
And I still really love the movie.
Yeah, I still do too. I definitely prefer the book, but I love the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah. Okay, so we are going to move on to a couple of the other adaptations. We're going to cover the TV show last because I think we actually have a lot to say.
We literally just watched.
Yeah, we just sat down and watched the first episode before we were recording. So real quick on the audio drama, which is like a radio drama from the 80s, and it's exactly what it sounds like. If you want to listen to it, you can find it on YouTube. It's not available on Audible, so just go ahead and go to YouTube. What were your thoughts on that?
I thought it sounded more like something out of the 1950s. Oh, that mist was a bad egg. I hope it's not some by Adolf Hitler. You know.
They definitely played up like the country Maine ruleisms.
And I understand when you're doing a radio drama, you everything's through your voice.
And you have to say, I'm going to walk over here now, instead of just saying, and they walked.
That's the medium, but I think that's probably the reason the medium's not really around anymore.
Actually, well, Star Wars still does audio dramas.
Star Wars still does audio dramas.
They did one on Count Dooku 2 years ago.
Oh, wow, I'm going to have to listen to that.
And there was a Dr. Aphra one last year.
Tell me that one is sexy.
It is super sexy.
Thank you.
It actually, it adapts some of the Darth Vader comic series where she is introduced, and then it adds like an origin story to her.
I still need to borrow those from you.
Yeah. But the Star Wars ones are good, and I'm actually listening, while I'm working, I'm listening to the original Star Wars radio dramas from the 80s, and those ones are kind of painful to listen to.
Okay.
They're kind of harsh.
But that's my take on it. Was if you like stuff like that, like it's not for me. But it's straight sound. I've listened to because I'm a giant Superman fan. I've listened to the radio dramas, the radio shows of Superman, where a bunch of stuff was actually introduced, like Kryptonite got its origin from the radio series.
Huh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the actor got sick or wanted to take a vacation or something, so they were like, Kryptonite.
So I wouldn't recommend it in terms of story.
Mm-hmm.
What I would recommend it for is I really enjoyed the sound engineering. I listened to it with headphones.
That probably would have helped me. I listened to it while I was doing chores and dishes.
Okay, so I had my headphones on, and I don't do earbuds. I do like the full ear enclosed headphones, and it's 3D sound. So it makes you feel like you're inside of it.
Okay, that probably would have helped a lot.
It really would have helped a lot. And it actually, I think it says right at the beginning, do this with headphones.
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention. I was just listening because I was doing chores and shit.
So, and it's only an hour and a half long.
Yeah, no,
Something like that.
I don't even know if it's that long. You can listen to it and get 2 loads of laundry done. So yeah, probably about an hour and a half.
I think I enjoyed it aesthetically in terms of the sound. Also, Will Sadler plays David Drayton, and he's also in the movie. He plays Myron.
Oh,
Yeah, so, which
that's
is cool. And I'm a big fan of him from Bill and Ted. He's the Grim Reaper.
I don't know actors very well. That's so cool.
So yeah, I love him. I think he's hilarious.
I changed my opinion. This is great.
But no, I mean, in terms of like an adaptation of the story, it's super awkward.
Yeah, the medium that this story works best for is first going to be a book.
A text-based video game.
Yeah, okay.
No, okay.
And then,
yeah, book.
And then
film.
And then film. And then maybe a video game, because I brought this up to you that Silent Hill, when they first were doing it as a concept, one of the creative directors was like, oh, we'll just make a... Because they were told, make a game that appeals to Americans. So he's like, oh, okay, I'll go get the rights to The Mist, and we'll make a Mist game.
I think it could be like a decent survival horror game where you're stuck in a place and you have to fortify it and you have to scrounge for supplies and interact with other survivors.
That might not be bad. I think there's something in there. We should crowdfund this.
Maybe, and you could even have some like RPG elements like crafting and skill trees.
I would like randomized instant death traps, like you get too close to a window and you're just dragged out into the mist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Let me pitch this. What do you think? Okay, so like, what if you get too close to a window and it's random number generated? Maybe a tentacle goes in and grabs you. Maybe it doesn't. But if the tentacle grabs you, what if there are reaction commands to try and get out of it?
Yeah. As long as you got like an item on you, you got like a pocket knife or something.
Yeah, yeah.
There's something in there. It might work as like a point-and-click adventure game.
Okay, and now let's go ahead and jump in. There is a text-based game from the 80s. We have not played it, but we did watch a sample of somebody else playing it on YouTube. Yes, when I say text-based,
it's all text.
It's all text. As in, it's basically like giving you a story, and then you have certain options. You can type, go west, go south, go east.
Kiss Ollie.
Kiss Ollie. He didn't
do that, but I wanted him to.
But what they did do was they threw salt on one of the monsters. And guess what? It fucking killed it.
They should have tried salt.
They should have tried salt.
It's canon now.
It is absolutely canon.
I hope they do it in the TV series.
But like you said, like, it's hard to imagine that people ever played games like that.
It's very hard for me, and I feel old these days. I'm 34, and to me, like, retro gaming is Super Nintendo Mario.
Yeah.
But God, these things used to have a market. They used to have an audience.
Yeah.
They probably still do.
They did a whole episode of Big Bang with Sheldon playing a text-based game, and I just remember that's when I think of text-based games. That's
that's what you picture.
Yeah. You might be able to download this game somewhere if you really, really want to play it, but if you want to see what we're talking about, just type in the Mist text-based game. If you don't add text-based, you're going to get the survival horror Mist game, or that point-and-click game that's Mist, M-Y-S-T, from the 90s. 2017's The Mist television series from Spike. This is not a full review. We've only seen the first episode.
Just one episode.
And we just watched it before recording, so we haven't even really had time to sit on it.
I just want to say one thing before we get started. I feel like we laughed way more than we were supposed to. Some of that was nervous laughter.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and go right out on a limb here and say, I liked it.
I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I've only heard bad things. Like, it doesn't have like a bad IMDb score or a bad like Rotten Tomatoes score, but like when you go to the comments and stuff,
it's just people trashing it.
People don't seem very happy. I have some theories on that I'm probably going to keep to myself.
I think it was also one of those shows that was canceled before it even finished like airing, or they may have even like before the first episode aired, they just were like, yeah, we're not doing a second season of this.
Yeah,
because it was intended to be a series. It's not a mini series.
Yeah.
So just kind of right off the bat, if you haven't seen it, it is not an adaptation of the book.
It just takes the story as not just an inspiration. They tell the story, but it's not.
It takes place in the same town.
Yeah.
It's about other people in the town and what happens with them in the Mist.
And different things happen to characters you know.
Right. If it weren't just only based on the first episode, if it weren't for Mrs. Carmody's inclusion in that, it could be taken as
This is just what other people were dealing with.
Yeah, it could be canon.
I almost would have preferred that.
Yeah, same.
That's a mild criticism.
So it opens in the first scene of this soldier in the woods who wakes up and he doesn't remember anything. He has amnesia and he's with this dog. And I said, "Oh, that dog's going to die," and then they immediately kill the dog.
I was kind of shocked. Usually they wait before they kill a dog.
From that point, I was like, "Okay, yeah, I bet this is going to be so bad." But then it
gets worse.
But then you go into this like high school story about this girl who has an overprotective mom and a dumbass dad
and a gay friend,
her gay best friend who's the best character, and then
maybe
he could still be.
Yeah, we'll find out.
But before you know it, like, you're wrapped up in this high school story, and yes, that part of it has nothing to do with the Mist, but you get invested in the characters, or at least want to know what happens very quickly.
It deals with a lot of sensitive topics, and I'm not a person who dances around these sorts of things, so I'm just going to jump right in and say this is the world's worst dad.
He's up there.
He's definitely up there.
Okay, and I'll go ahead and just describe it, because unlike the movie, I think a lot of people listening may have not seen the show.
Yeah.
We are going to go full spoilers on the first episode. So if you don't want to hear this, well, you can probably just turn it off now, because this is what we're going to talk about for the rest of the show. But, okay, so the mom's overprotective. She gets invited to a party. The mom says no with no discussion. The dad goes behind her back and tells her, "Wait till your mom's asleep, and only if your friend goes with you, you can go to this party." I understand the dad being resistant to the mom being overprotective.
Being that like that immediate no.
Yeah, they didn't even discuss it. There was no discussion, not only with the daughter, but there was no discussion with
each
him.
other.
Yeah, she cut him out of the decision. But
at that point, I was still kind of like,
one, you don't go behind your wife's back.
Never.
Two, don't send your 16-year-old daughter to a party
where you know there's alcohol
with football players. That is just, well, spoiler alert, she does get raped.
Yeah.
They find her the next morning. She's not in her bed. She's in the backyard. To her credit, she immediately comes out with it and tells them everything. She's like, "I drank, I got drunk, I woke up, and I'm pretty sure I got raped." She doesn't try to hide it from them. This girl seems to kind of have her head on her shoulders pretty well.
Aside from calling her mom a slut.
Yeah, that was dumb, but I mean, I've said dumb stuff to my parents too. I've never called them a slut, but
I do remember one time when I said "fuck you" to my mom when I was 16, and it did not end well.
But it goes from there. They go to the police. They're going to press charges. The kid who allegedly did it,
the star football player,
is the son of, I don't know if he's the police chief or the sheriff, but he's the son of a cop.
Yeah, he's one of the big cops.
Yeah.
One of the town cops. There's not a lot of town cops, but
so they get her examined by a doctor. The doctor confirms, yes, she had intercourse. Yes, there was a chemical in her body to insinuate that she was passed out, but there's no sign of violence, so we're not sure about a rape case. But supposedly they have a witness who's the gay best friend.
And I have not seen any more of these episodes, but I'm putting my theory out here. I think the gay best friend did it to frame the football player.
And you're not just saying that based on nothing. There is an awkward scene where him and the girl are hanging out in her bed, and he says they're all going to make it sound like it's your fault.
And it's framed very darkly. And then there's a scene with the football player, and he's with his dad, and I can't remember the character's name, so he's just the football player. We'll call him Jay.
I don't know.
Yeah, he's Jay now.
He's Jay.
Jay's like, "Why are you acting as though I did it?"
It very strongly insinuates that he's innocent.
And we might be wrong. He might have fully done it. There might have been a second football player. But the way it's being framed right now, I think that's like the big twist. Which, the kid even says that he's not gay. He's attracted to the person. He's
yeah, not the gender. He's pansexual.
Thank you. That's what my ex-wife always said she was.
And for those of you who want an education on that, it's different from bisexual means that you're attracted to men and women. Pansexual means you're attracted to people regardless of gender.
Don't let a dick be a deal breaker or a be a problem.
So, yeah, I'm not going to edit that out, but I'm probably going to edit that in some way.
I don't take our laughter to be making light of this topic, but we were not expecting to go into a missed adaptation and end up with a high school rape drama story.
And when we said earlier we were laughing at inappropriate parts, it wasn't during any of that.
No, it was... God, there's like the cockroach scene.
Yeah.
Or when the woman stabs the dude.
Or when they go to arrest the football player at school.
And they're like, hey, come with us. Dude, just come with us. And then the football player keeps going, why? Did something happen to my dad? What's going on? And then they're like, you're being investigated for sexual assault. And then one of the cops looks at the other football players and goes, hey, good game the other day.
That's so funny.
I'm like, that's so fucked up, but that also seems so real to me.
No, it is, because sometimes when you're in an awkward situation, you say something stupid just because you don't know what to say. Like, for instance, I was at a funeral once, and I went to say hi to the spouse of the deceased, and I said, how's your day going? Just like a
Oh, dude, wow.
I know, because I just didn't know what to say. And I just went, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to...
I'll make you feel better. I'll pull up some of my old flirting with women through DMs so you can laugh at me.
No, that's okay. We're not gonna do that. But it does... Don't think this is like Bridgeton, Maine 90210. It does eventually get to the mist. The mist is introduced towards the end of the episode. There are pretty... some cool deaths. One of the cops gets eaten half alive by cockroaches.
Yeah.
And then killed by a prisoner.
Mrs. Carmody, big spoiler. She's just fucking killed.
Yeah. She gets...
She's straight up a Karen in this one.
Yeah.
This is 100% Karen.
She's like if Peggy Hill met Mrs. Carmody and did the fusion dance.
I don't want my kids learning about sex because of your daughter that lied about being raped, and then she walks out into the mist. She gets her jaw ripped off and then dragged out into the mist. There was one interesting thing, and I actually kind of wanted to see what happens with it when it comes to the mist. When the old hippie lady and her husband come out, they run into somebody, and the person asks them, are you real?
It makes it seem like some of the people who are in the mist aren't dying, but kind of going crazy.
Like there's a hallucinogenic effect.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious. That has me interested. It sets up the mysteries well.
There's also, when the teenage girl gets out of the car in the mall parking lot, there's the guy who just, like, plows her over.
And then dies.
Yeah, he was acting like a lunatic. So there's definitely I think there are going to be more aspects to the mist than just monsters.
I think it was actually a pretty good first episode. It pulls you in. And the rest of it might be fire trash. I'm going to watch it on my own.
I can definitely see it falling apart from here.
Yeah.
Remember how good the first episode of The Stand 2020 was?
Uh-huh.
That was a great first episode.
Yeah. Herald the show.
Another cool thing, just some random things I liked. The high school kids actually look like they're in high school. They don't look like they're 25.
No, they look 16, 17 years old. I'm sure they're probably like in their low 20s.
They're probably like 18, 19, 20.
Yeah.
I really liked all the stuff with the animals leaving, like the birds and the frogs all leaving.
What did you say about the dad? He looked like an ugly Poe Dameron.
Yeah, he looked.
But you were right. Whenever the mist is in the distance and all the birds are flying away from it and the frogs are leaving the lake, when nature runs one direction, you run with it because you don't want to be what they're running from.
Exactly. Let me get the ugly Poe Dameron guy's name. Morgan Spector.
Scroll back up for a second. Look how villainous they're making the gay friend look in that picture.
I think you're probably right. And I wish I didn't watch it with you because I would not have picked up on that and it would have gotten me. But yeah, I bet you're right. I bet like maybe he's in love with her. Maybe he's like putting on all this stuff as an act so he doesn't reveal to her that he's in love with her. I don't know.
My personal theory is that the football players have just been tormenting him so much.
His name is Jay.
That this is the only way that he could think of to ruin their lives.
Or, yeah, maybe it's just a scam to get them in jail. But he's doing it to the one that defended him.
Sometimes people do stupid shit.
Or maybe he only defends him when the girl's around.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
There might be more to it, but that's my personal theory right now. He's going to be a Harold Lauder. So, we'll find out. You guys can all criticize this episode later after I watch it.
We are going to watch... The intent was to only watch the first episode and just briefly talk about it. I'm going to watch more of it. We might do an episode down the road where we cover the full thing.
Yeah, I might watch more of it tonight.
But yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised, but I can definitely see it going downhill.
Because setting something up, honestly, I don't want to say it's easy because people fuck setups up all the time.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's easier to set up a cool mystery and dangerous situation, but then to not know where to go with it.
So, and then actually we have an off week. So we're supposed to be off the week of March 27th.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to do an episode on the Mist TV show, we could do it then. And that gives us over a month to watch it.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So we might do that. All right. So, do you have any last thoughts on the Mist? Actually, before. Ranking. Okay. So, if you've been listening to us, you know that each book we read, we're ranking them just kind of overall. We haven't done that yet with movies and TV. Do we want to do that with what we've watched so far, which would be the 2 stand miniseries, the Phantoms movie, and the Mist film?
Yeah, I mean, right now the Mist film's my number 1.
Yeah, it is also my number 1.
And then probably the 90s stand, followed by the other stand, followed by Phantoms.
I would do the same, but I would flip the 2 stands because of what I explained in that episode. I do think the 90s one is better, but the 2020 one has the higher highs and
the lower lows. Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, cool. So, and we won't rank the Mist TV series yet.
It might end up here in the near future.
And then on our radio dramas ranking list, The Mist is number 1, undisputed.
Undisputed champion.
Well, yeah.
It's also the number 1 game.
Okay, so final thoughts on The Mist before we talk about what we have coming up on the show.
I highly recommend The Mist. I recommend it in pretty much all of its forms right now.
Especially the text-based video.
Because salt works, and that's enough. That was enough for me. I love the way the story's written. I love the way people have adapted it, and I love the things that it's inspired.
Okay, and yes, great book, great movie, really enjoy it. Share it with your friends, unless they're afraid of spiders. Do not.
No, especially share it with them then.
No.
The 16-leg spiders.
Okay, so next week we are going to be back, and we're going to be covering the Rudyard Kipling short story, The Mark of the Beast. We are supposed to be off the week after that. We might surprise you with a bonus episode. Otherwise, we will definitely be back the first week in April. We're going to be covering Gotham by Gaslight, A Tale of the Batman, which is the story where he fights Jack the Ripper. Then the next week, April 10th, we're going to cover the Gotham by Gaslight film. And then April 17th, we are going to cover Stephen King's Firestarter. So that's the next novel we're doing. The episode's going to drop April 17th. So this episode is dropping March 17th, so you've got a month to read Firestarter. That's plenty of time. It's one of his shorter books. It's not a novella, it's just a shorter novel.
Yeah, it's not it.
Yes, and we decided to add that in kind of last minute because the movie's coming out.
And we want to be a little bit topical.
Right. The movie's coming out on... we're going to cover the movie on our episode May 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
So after Firestarter, we're going to jump straight into it. But on our off weeks, we're also going to cover some of the Firestarter...
adaptations.
Yeah, because there's the original movie with Drew Barrymore that adapts the novel. And then there's the 2-episode miniseries that's a sequel that's not based on the novel. And then we have the new movie that's coming out. That's why we're covering it. I like Firestarter. I don't think it's in any way his best book, but I like it. I think it's a good, solid entry in his bibliography, but I don't think it does, for me, it doesn't rank up there with like It and Salem's Lot and Pet Sematary, but it's definitely worth reading and worth talking about. There's a lot of great stuff in it. And this will be your first time reading it, right?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. It's been on my reading list for a while, but it's just one of those ones I kept putting off.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to wrap it up there. Like I said, we'll be back next week with The Mark of the Beast, and then after that, you want to start on Firestarter and It. Those are our next 2 novels that we are reading. But yeah, thank you very much for hanging out with me tonight, Daniel.
It's always a pleasure. Always have a good time.
All right, everybody, stay scary.
Stay scary.
Well, that was horrendous. I would tell you boys good job, but the dryness of my sarcasm would likely evaporate all the moisture in both your bodies. Anyway, if you want to hear more of this, please subscribe to their YouTube channel by searching for The Horror of Babylon. You can follow them on Twitter at HorrorPod69. The Facebook page is under The Horror of Babylon. And on Instagram, these fools are The Horror of Babylon, one word. Reach their assuredly empty inbox at thehorrorofbabylonpodcast at gmail.com. You can also request their Discord server link via any other channel. And finally, if you are foolish enough to support this abomination financially, search for The Horror of Babylon on patreon.com. And God save your soul if you do.